Today is Amerika.
Sorry, start again, please.
That's okay. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. And our speaker today is Amerika Garcia Grewal. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She is a Texas native currently residing in Fiji. She is the past Deputy Regional Vice Chair for Asia Pacific and the former chair of the Hispanic Caucus for Democrats Abroad. She grew up in the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas. And as she put it to me, she had gone home recently for a visit, and surprise, there was an international humanitarian crisis at her doorstep. So she is here to talk with us about that this evening. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the chance to tell the story. I dropped some of these photos into the chat. And I also have the one that everyone wants to see right there behind me. So let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Amerika Garcia Grewal, and I'm originally from Eagle Pass, Texas. Went to school here, graduated from Eagle Pass High School, went to Southwest Texas Junior College. And then like many of our students do, I went away for college. And like many of our youth do, I didn't come back for a really long time. The border changed dramatically while I was away. For example, September 11th, the border shut down. And so what used to be something where you could go across, get some lunch, come back over, the way you might go across town to pick up your pharmacy prescriptions, or go across town to that special grocery store to get certain items. That's what it was like for me growing up here in Eagle Pass. And that's one of the things that changed very dramatically on September 11th. We went from not having to present any ID when we came back to having to present a passport. And so that single requirement right there stopped a lot of people from crossing the border, because we're economically very disadvantaged, and a lot of folks couldn't swing the money to get a passport. The border militarization began mostly, I'd say, September 11th of 2001, but it's continued as the years go by. And it took a really big jump on March 6th, 2021, when Governor Abbott of Texas announced the Operation Lone Star. He signed, I think, 8 bills that day, and announced that he was going to start increasing the number of people at the Texas-Mexico border. And a lot of folks, the first time they heard about this was a full year later, in April 2022, when DeSantis jumped in on the action. April 2022, the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, was busing migrants to places like Washington, D.C. and New York City. The Florida governor didn't want to have someone else get all the attention. And so he actually flew down to Texas. And in San Antonio, a number of people who had come through Eagle Pass were talked into boarding these planes and being flown up to Martha's Vineyard, which did not have the infrastructure, did not have any receive them. It was absolutely, totally, completely a political stunt. And on June 8th, 2023, Governor Abbott announced that he was going to put these buoys that you see behind me into the Rio Grande. And I heard the news and I was like, you know what? Bridge 2 down here in Eagle Pass took 20 years to get put up. He might say he's going to do it, but there's no way he can do it, on the timeline that he's suggesting. What I didn't realize was that he was using the disaster declaration that he had used during COVID, that he'd used for so many other things. And he was saying, I don't have to pay attention to the laws of Texas or the laws of the United States or any city ordinances or anything. I can do whatever I want. And he actually tweeted out that saying, I'm not asking for any permission at all. Yes. So I left the country. So my family has spread out. So I spent the last 8 years living in Fiji, and trying to vote for Fiji is very much a challenge. If anybody is a Texas voter, you have to return a paper ballot. During COVID, there were no flights. So it was very, very hard to vote for Fiji during the COVID years. I have a sister that lives in Vietnam 10 months out of the year, 2 months out of the year, they go to her husband's hometown in Ireland. And so in the month of June, going into July, I went to Ireland to see my sister. And we hung out. We had a great time. Actually had an absolutely amazing time, kind of a social media break and everything. And I got back into the country and a friend said, hey, can you show up at this protest? I said, no, I can't. I'm not in town. So she's like, okay, well, please pass this on. As I'm driving into town, I was like, gee, I wonder how this protest went. Let me take a look. And I pulled up their Instagram feed, and they were actually on site at Shelby Park. And there were trucks arriving. This is July the 7th. There were trucks that were arriving with these buoys that you see behind me on the trucks. And I'm just like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Like, how is this possible? It felt like I was in an altered dimension or something. So we went to City Hall. I'm thinking like somebody at City Hall must surely have some answers. And City Hall said, no, this is entirely the state of Texas. So then we went down to Shelby Park, and the Texas Department of Public Safety said, the people of Eagle Pass have asked us here. You know, we can't come here without the city of Eagle Pass authorizing us. It was like, oh, I was just at City Hall, and City Hall did not say that. So that was kind of an interesting, you know, put that in your pocket for later. And they also said that the operation had been 7 months in the planning, of which we had only heard about it 1 month before. Yeah, that it was going to happen, whether we liked it or not. Well, the buoys arrived on July 7th, and that was a Friday. July 10th, assembly began of 1,000 feet of the buoys. And if you're looking at my photos, you can actually see the kayak ship I'm about to tell you on. And you can see the 1,000 feet of the buoys in the Rio Grande. The buoys were supposed to be put in between Bridge 1 and Bridge 2 in Eagle Pass, where they would have been very, very visible from one of the busiest ports in the nation. I think we're the 23rd busiest port in the entire United States. But because of our protest on July 7th, because of all the attention it received, because of the lack of permits, they actually moved outside the city limits to a place within Maverick County. So that was kind of also another, put this in your pocket, advocacy can be faster than legislation. Advocacy can be faster than litigation. So if you have any doubt that your voice matters, I'm here to tell you right now, those buoys are not in Eagle Pass, like the city proper, they're in the county, because we spoke up, because we protested. Well, there was a lot of attention generated by them on July the 7th. And so Epi's canoe and kayak team is run by a fellow named Jesse Fuentes. He had filed a lawsuit saying that his business could not operate for 2 reasons. One is because the Texas Department of Public Safety had put these buoys in, and also because they had taken over the boat ramp. And as citizens of Eagle Pass, we no longer had access to the only public boat ramp in the entire city. There were also some private piers and stuff, but with everything going on, it was not possible to get access to those. So Epi's canoe and kayak team did a media trip. They took 26 of us down the Rio Grande, and I called about 10 p.m. the night before. One of the local news organizations here in Eagle Pass needed a photographer. And my father said that he was happy to take my mom to her doctor's appointments. And so I was off of taxi duties. I was able to go and take pictures. And what I saw was, yes, we have the buoys, but there's also been 7 miles of concertina wire that have been strung up and down the Rio Grande River. The banks of the Rio Grande have been bulldozed, again, about 7 miles, or 3 miles going downstream and about 3 miles going upstream. Some of the islands that were in the middle of the river have actually bulldozed onto the American side. And so the vegetation, the wildlife, everything that was on those islands is just gone. It is now just a heap of dirt that is kind of pushed up against the bank of the river on the United States side. It was far worse than I'd ever imagined. And it was something that really came as a surprise, because you can't see this. as citizens of Eagle Pass, we had lost access to Shelby Park. For example, my father will go, he'll drop my mom at the flea market on Mondays, and then he'll take the dog for a walk around Shelby Park, and he'd been told, you can't be here. It's like, oh, okay. You know, and you know, you don't question the guys. They're wearing uniforms. You figure that whatever they're doing, they're authorized to be there. The local car and bike motorcycle club, the local car and bike club, they used to go for cruises down by the river, and they had been told, you're no longer allowed to be there. And so we decided, okay, this is our park, this is our access point. We're going to ask City Council to have it back. And so we made a pretty heavy push in conjunction with this media trip on the 1st of August. And so after I saw, you know, what was on the river, I came back and I spoke at City Council, and I was like, guys, you gotta stop. You've got to get this out. I wasn't the only one. There were almost 30 of us from around the state of Texas. The No Border Wall Coalition out of Laredo showed up. City councilman or a councilwoman from Laredo showed up. We had people from Brownsville to El Paso that came and spoke at our city council meeting. We also had the Maine attorney for Operation Lone Star, and we also had a representative from the Department of Public Safety, a DPS trooper, that came and spoke for Operation Lone Star. The Eagle Pass City Council rescinded the trespassing affidavit, and we were told we had our park back, which was awesome. But that didn't stop everything, because it meant that we as citizens could enter the park, but the Department of Public Safety was still there, and also the 7 miles of concertina wire was still there. So it was really wonderful, but it didn't fix the problem. That was August 1st, 2023. August 2nd, 2 bodies were found in the buoys. Now, the buoys are in shallow water. Something that's really interesting is the International Water and Boundary Commission found that the buoys were actually in Mexican territorial waters. So the buoys were actually moved about 10 yards closer into the United States. So now they're high and dry. I mean, they're in ankle deep water if they're anything at all. So August 2nd was a Wednesday, and those of us who had protested, those of us who had spoken at City Hall, were like, we need to mark this. We need to show, you know, people died, and we need to mark this. I learned that over 850 people have died trying to enter the United States on the Texas-Mexico crossing last year. So this year, the number is well over 500. It's rapidly approaching 600, and we are just in the month of September. Many of the people who died, we don't have any names for. We had a vigil the evening of August the 7th, and I went to the consulate here in Eagle Pass to try to get the names of those who died. The consul was very appreciative of what we were doing and said that they could not release the names to us because they would have to have the permission of the family, but also in a number of cases, there are no names to release. And that's because the bodies are found and there are no papers, there's no way to tell who this person is. For example, there was a case where 2 people escaped from coyotes, and they said that they had originally been a group of 4. And 2 bodies were found. If it had not been for their compatriots saying, you know, hey, these are our friends, look for them, then the other 2 bodies would never have been identified because they were stripped of their belongings, they were stripped of money, everything, and only the bodies were found. There's a number of different ways that people have died entering the United States, and sometimes it is malfeasance. For example, you probably heard about trailers being left in parking lots. There have also been a number of high-speed chases, which have led to 30 deaths here along the border. There's a lot of things that are going on, but a lot of it has to do with drownings, and because the concertina wire does not allow people to go from one shore to the other, enter the United States and continue on. Instead, people become exhausted as they try to come up the shore, and so then they'll stumble, go down, and then they never come back up. So it's actually it's very cruel. It's not necessary. And many of the folks who are coming over right now are families. They are asylum seekers from countries that we have said, you know, we will consider your request for asylum. Goodness. August 7th, Rio Grande Memorial Vigil. That's when I learned the scope of what we were dealing with. August the 8th, we had a Democratic congressional delegation that visited the buoys, asked to testify to them about their experiences and what we'd seen. And this is an environmental crisis. This is a humanitarian crisis. This is an economic crisis. So this is hitting on so many different areas. It's somewhat of an assumption that if we put a big enough border or an alligator in the river or a tall enough wall or a strict enough penalty, that people will stop coming. And that's not going to happen. I spent the last 8 years of my life living in Fiji. In the South Pacific, we were talking very concretely in specific terms about evacuating countries. The nation of Vanuatu actually purchased a large plot of land in Fiji because their country is expected to be underwater in a few short years. And they're making very concrete plans to preserve their culture and to preserve their language once they pick up and move everybody and everything to another country. That's the kind of that we need to be talking about. That's the kind of humanitarian support that we need to be at, because pretty soon it's not just going to be South and Central America trying to find climates. It's going to be Texas. It's going to be folks like me as well. So we've had 2 vigils. We've had a number of, I'm going to turn my video off for just a moment while I'm talking. We've had 2 vigils now, and we've had, I believe, 3 press conferences, I think 2 protests out at the Rio Grande River now. Our temperature has been over 118 degrees at some of these different events, and I've actually sent people home because it's too hot to be outside. And this is for 1-2 hours at a time. I can't even begin to imagine how bad it is for somebody who tries to make the crossing beginning at dawn and is in the water until 3-4 in the afternoon. In speaking to some of the folks at the missions, they talk about children coming in with sunburns that are so bad that when the blisters burst, there's raw open sores underneath. And the shelters are also calling for crutches, canes, walkers, wheelchairs, because people's feet and legs are so badly beaten up from trying to cross. And again, it's because you cannot simply go from point A to point B. You're looking for a place to come through. Oh goodness. We've had 5 governors that came down to the state of Eagle Pass. They were here on August 21st. August 22nd, the Department of Justice heard the buoy case, and they just recently said that the buoys had to be removed, and then the appeals case said, nope. I mentioned the Border Network for Human Rights press conference. We had our 2nd vigil, and then we've been contacted by external entities saying, we want to do stuff, help us with it. So for example, we kicked off the Legalization for All week of action, and held a conference and announced what was going to happen, and then all over the United States in their different activities, and then we just helped amplify the message. So I guess that's kind of what's happening down here in Eagle Pass. I mentioned that this is a climate crisis, and that is, my experience in the South Pacific showed me that this is not going to change. People have to relocate if they don't have the money to climate proof the place that they're at. And this is true. You know, if humans want to survive, and this is everybody. This is you in Mexico. This is me in Texas. You know, this is who is in a place where strong storms may disrupt your way of life, or wildfires may disrupt your way of life, or the blistering hot temperatures. Like I said, I think we're over 77 days above 100 degrees every single day. The humanitarian crisis, I mentioned, you know, over 850 people perished, and that is an undercount. Last year, this year, we're rapidly approaching the same numbers there, but that's not a count of the number of people who pay a physical and a financial and an emotional toll as they try to leave their home country and as they seek a safe place to live. So the first boy who perished in the buoy, his his mother was still in Mexico. He kind of left without his mom, thinking he'd get across and then he'd call for her. And he didn't make it. He died. Well, one of the pastors from the vigil was in Piedras Negras, our sister city, and met the mother and actually did a video with her, which was beautiful and, you know, reaffirmed why it is we're doing what we do. But after the pastor walked away, the mother, who just lost her son, was then approached, and they tried to get money from her. They're like, "Oh, you have connections in el norte, you know, like you have access to money." And she's like, "No, I don't. I have nothing. I've lost everything." But I also mentioned an economic crisis. So Texas has declared that they put $10 billion towards Operation Lone Star. Every single hotel in Eagle Pass, and they built 2 new ones in the last 2 years. Every single hotel in Eagle Pass is packed. Our hotels go for as much as $600 US a night, and this is like a Hotel 8. This is a Holiday Inn Express. This is La Quinta. This is not, you know, the Intercontinental. This is not, you know, a fancy hotel in Cancun. But there's so much pressure on our hotel rooms that anybody else who wants to come down here is paying a premium for the hotels. Our restaurants, we have more restaurants in Eagle Pass than you can believe, because all of these officers are on a per diem and they're eating out in restaurants, having a good old time. And this is an economically depressed area. So you've got 1/3 of our population who are receiving food stamps, and they're using their EBT card to check out with groceries. And you can look across the parking lot, cars parked in front of the restaurants. And so it's kind of like, wait a second, what's wrong with this picture? You know, the teachers here in Eagle Pass got a $100 raise for the entire year. They didn't get it, you know, $100 a month. For the entire year, they received a $100 raise. And so what we have is a poison apple, where we've got money coming into the city in terms of tax, the hotel and room tax, and in terms of the sales tax on the meals and everything, but we're not doing any kind of economic development. And so to a certain extent, the city cannot say, guys, it's time to pack up and go home, because we're a poor town. You know, we don't have a way to replace the money that's coming into our hotels and the jobs that our hotels are generating and the jobs that our restaurants are generating. So it's very much a less than ideal situation. I have a question here from Pamela. Why do I think Abbott chose Eagle Pass to put these buoys in the Rio Grande? So Eagle Pass is a small town. We're less than 30,000 people, and the #1 employer in the state of in the city of Eagle Pass is the city school district, which gets all of their money from the state. And after that, it's Customs and Border Patrol. So it has been a challenge finding people to speak publicly because their jobs are on the line. So I work remotely. My business is still in Fiji, and nearly every single person who's spoken up is either retired or has an income source that is not tied to the state of Texas. The other thing is, we only have a couple of small newspapers. We don't have any network news here. We don't have any large syndicated news papers here in Eagle Pass. And so to a certain extent, the story that the media wants to tell, for example, Fox News, actually, as Shelby Park, I noticed the governor's media team was going down to the river. They can say whatever they want, and there's nobody there to counter it. So we have started doing a lot of Facebook Live, Instagram Live events, and also like as we've gotten out there, reporters have contacted us, and we're like, oh yeah, I'll show you a picture of that right now. For example, when the congressional delegation came here, they cleaned up. There had been concertina wire up and down the boat ramp, and when the congressional delegation came in, we're like, oh my goodness, you guys, they got rid of this, they got rid of that, they got rid of that. And we actually showed them pictures of what it had been like just 7 days previously. We showed them about how the boats from all of these different states had been parked up onto the playing turf, our soccer fields and stuff like that. And we showed a number of different things that were different once Congress came in October. So Janet's asking, what's the status of the buoys in the courts? I know Abbott said he would go to the Supreme Court if necessary. Yes, Abbott has said that he to challenge all kinds of things. So for example, when the Dobbs decision came out, he said that he wanted to retry, I think Plessy versus, He wants to retry a case which allows children who do not have legal standing in the United States to go to schools in the States. That lawsuit was fought, I believe, before Brown versus Board of Education, and it's the reason that all kids in Texas can go to school regardless of the immigration status. No, it's not Plessy versus Ferguson. It's another one, and I just, it'll come to me. I'm not here on the spot. But Abbott has said there's a lot of things that he wants to challenge. He wants to take to the Supreme Court. The status of the buoys in the court is that the very first judge in, I think, District 5 had said that the buoys had to be removed by September 15th. Abbott appealed, no surprise there. The appeals court said that they could stay until the court heard the case on October 5th. So the case will be heard on October the 5th, and we'll see what's going to go on. And he said he wants to go to the Supreme Court. So I expect that this will go to the Supreme Court. I am very concerned about that. As I mentioned, last 8 years, I was in the South Pacific, and the discussion was about, moving 80% of the infrastructure that we had in the nation of Fiji was below the king tide line, the high water mark in the country. And it's like, it's coming. We have to make change. And so there was no ifs, there was no, like, whose fault is it? It was just kind of like, okay, we have to change the way we do business. We have to change the crops that we are planting. We have to change what we do because the world is changing. And here, there doesn't seem to be any awareness of that. And I see, oh goodness, I see a lot of cars being sold that still run on, dinosaur juice, that they're using gasoline instead of hybrids. And if the state of Texas is successful in saying every state can determine their immigration policy, then when Texans have to leave Texas because of the extreme heat and because of the lack of water, then we basically just told Oklahoma and Kansas and Nebraska and South Dakota and North Dakota, you can turn Texans away. This is not something that's very cool. So Nancy's asking, yes, Flyer versus Doe was the case I was thinking about. That's the case that allows school children to go to school regardless of their documented immigration status. And Abbott is actually on record as saying that he wants to retry Flyer versus Doe. And he doesn't want kids to be educated in the state of Texas if they are not citizens or permanent residents. Nancy Craven asks, what keeps the migrants from using the 2 bridges you mentioned to enter the United States and apply for asylum? Okay, so right now, anybody who is eligible to apply for asylum has to use an app called CBP1. And I believe there are 1,450 spots available every 24 hours between Brownsville and San Diego. So like that's how many spots in the entire United States are available every 24 hours. The app is glitchy and people have trouble getting into it. The other thing is there are documented cases of extortion where people have an appointment, they are desperate to get across the bridge and get to their appointment, and Mexican officials have held them up and tried to shake them down for money. So the process is not ideal. So yeah, it's not an open asylum process, even though many of the people are coming from nations that they are eligible to apply for asylum for. It's just that we put such an incredible bottleneck in that the numbers are pent up, and also remaining in Mexico is becoming more and more of a challenge. As I mentioned, they're under a lot of pressure. The kidnapping, the extortion, the rape, everything. It's really tough. So Janet's asking, could I speak about the effect the buoys are having on the migratory patterns of birds and animals? I don't know specifically about that. I do know that we've been approached by a number of academics who've asked us a lot of questions. And one of the issues is that we can't get to the buoys easily because they're about 2 miles downriver from the only public boat ramp. And the people who have land on the river have actually lost access to their own land. And so, like, even if we had permission to come out, so for example, the day that I took this particular set of photos right here, we were able to take out at a place called Heavenly Farms. And Heavenly Farms, at their own cost, actually installed a gate into the chain link fence that, let me change my video so you can see. I have a number of photos that I was going to add in here. And you can actually see a bunch of these pictures in the, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to be able to find that for you on short notice, but I am going to show you something really beautiful, and that is what the river looks like when it doesn't have concertina wire, and when it doesn't have, when it hasn't been bulldozed and all those other different kinds of things. So let me drop the photo picture in here again, and you're welcome to go through there. I'm also happy to answer any questions about the photos there. So yeah, so Janet, back to your question about the migratory patterns. I had a hunter call me, and he was in tears. He said that there was a farm next to where he goes hunting, and they put concertina wire up. And he's like, I've seen all kinds of animals hung up on barbed wire. He's like, this razor wire is so close together, it's gonna kill the animals. And I helped him file a complaint with PETA. I went to an EPA meeting, and I told the Region 6 director of the EPA, help. And she goes, who put it in there? And I was like, the state of Texas. She goes, that's who you've got to have help you. And I'm like, but they do it. You know, like they are not helping. It was kind of funny because after I spoke and I said, we need help, every single speaker after me said, what about river turbidity? What about? And brought in all these different points. And after about the fourth question, the EPA director is like, well, it's got to be over my head. You've got to talk to Congress. And I'm like, I'm speaking to them on September the 25th. I will mention this. I will absolutely totally mention this. So we are trying to do that. So yeah. So we're at this point in time, Janet, to answer your question, we don't have answers because we can't get access to it. I think somebody from the Mexican side is probably going to get better access to it and answer those questions before we can. The next question was, what happens if people don't have electronic access to the required app? These are not my numbers. Our state representative, Eddie Morales, did a survey, or in conjunction with Mexican partners, they did a survey of the people who were in Mexican shelters expecting to come over into the United States. And many of the people who were in shelters had in excess of 10,000 US dollars worth of cash or cash instruments, and they had smartphones. He and I believe a Republican congressman, this is the state legislature, this is not federal congressman, they are trying to have a state processing center for immigrants where people can come in and they can be, basically their background can be checked, and they can be given a work permit here in the state of Texas, not the United States, but in the state of Texas, where they can pay taxes and everything else, because they're acknowledging that this number is not going to end. But in answer to your question about electronic access, many of the asylum seekers have sold their home and all their belongings, and they actually have a fair amount of cash. Now, that's all they have. It is what remains of their worldly goods for coming into the United States. And that's one of the reasons why they become such big targets to the drug cartels and for kidnapping and for extortion, because they know that they have cash. They know that they have jewelry. They know that they have, like, for example, people will buy a new smartphone because they're leaving, and the smartphones are used for access to WhatsApp groups, for Google Maps, and for a number of other different resources there. The white things floating in the river. So I'm going to assume that that's the, it's not rapids, cascades, if you will. Is this the question, or is it from another photo? Pamela, you have a question that I'm not sure how to answer. I think that's just some white water on top of the river. over my shoulder, but I'm not sure what the question is referring to.
Is there something in the other photo with the buoys that had something white in it?
I can go back and take a look at that.
May I just interrupt for a second? America, it's
Sure.
so much fun to see you again after the AGM. And apologies that I had two sets of workers here. But I really loved what I had a chance to hear on your talk. And I just want to say thank you very much for having joined us with this, because I'm also part of the board here, as you know. So you're always terrific. And it's just, now we got to connect again. Let's connect. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm going to drop my contact info down here. But what I'm going to say is, speak up. You know, people ask me my why, you know, why do you get involved here? And at the age of 16, I went to Germany as an exchange student. One of the things that really shocked me when I went to the former concentration camps that are now museum sites is that they were in town. And one of the things that really just struck me was that people could leave their shift at the concentration camp, go home for lunch, and walk back. And I was just like, how is that possible? Like, how is that possible? And I can walk to the river. It is 1.7 miles from here to the river. And people are dying there. They're dying right off Shelby Boat Park. There's a boy that died there on Wednesday afternoon, a 10-year-old who tried to cross with his mother. I believe that we have the beginning of an American Holocaust happening here on our border. And they're going to go and say they're illegal, they're breaking the law, you know, all these different things. But these are folks who are trying to survive. An example that I've been given is it's like hitting somebody who ran in the road. They shouldn't have been in the road in the first place. And it's like, yeah, they're running away from a bear, you know, and you were speeding. You should not have been going that fast. So they've gone, you know, into the road, but they're running for their lives. And they're the first trickle in what's going to be the largest migration that humanity has ever known. And, you know, we don't look at folks down the road and say like, oh, they were good folks that just wanted a better economy. And so they endorsed Hitler. You know, we call them Nazis. We don't look at folks and say like, oh, they were good folks. They just didn't want to make a mess. You know, they didn't want their neighbors mad at them. No, we call those folks Nazis too. You know, don't look at folks and say like, oh, they were good folks, but they didn't know what was going on in their neighborhood. We call those folks Nazis as well. And so there's something really awful happening here on the US-Mexico border. And now that we know better, we need. Pamela, I will take a look at the photos and see. Oh, I know what you're asking about. Okay, so for the vigil, we wanted to do a candlelight vigil on August the 7th, but it is so dry here. It's just so incredibly dry here. I'm surprised we don't have wildfires, but it's actually so dry, there's nothing to burn. So we just that we wanted to put flowers into the river because, you know, they're natural and they'll decompose and everything else. And so we actually had flowers. We began at the border wall at the top of Shelby Park, and then we walked down about a little quarter of a mile, maybe less, from the top of Shelby Park down to the Shelby Park boat ramp, and then we lay the flowers onto the river. That was the August 7th vigil, and then on September the 2nd, I don't have the date anymore. So the second vigil was on September the 4th. On September the 4th, we actually had the entire vigil on the boat ramp. So the Eagle Pass Car and Bike Club had a car show at the county lake, and then they drove around the loop, and then they drove down onto the boat ramp, which they had not had access to for over a year. And then we did a car and bike with one of the pastors that was there, and we had a very short ceremony the second time around, and then again opened up the gates and laid flowers on the river. So yeah, so what you're seeing are flowers that were thrown into the river with prayers. Oh my goodness. Oh, Pamela, thank you for what you've been doing. So, before we came in, I was actually sharing the current situation. So I've been getting calls from reporters for the last 2 weeks saying, hey, DPS is drawing down. Where are they going? What do you know about DPS leaving the border? And I was like, maybe their temporary duty expired. It's the beginning of the next quarter. I don't know. Nobody told me. But we did notice also that there were fewer people from the Texas Department of Public Safety. So last night there were between 300 and 400 people who crossed over the Rio Grande into Eagle Pass. And since March 2021, DPS has actually been on site. In fact, they testified to Congress, the congressional delegation in August, that the Texas Department of Public Safety had displaced the Customs and Border Patrol, who are usually in that space. Well, DPS has drawn down. From what I can gather, they didn't give a message or anything, give a memo to Customs and Border Patrol. And so when these large groups started coming over, it left local authorities and federal authorities struggling to get people into place to receive them. So I'm speaking to Congress on September 25th. I contacted one of my friends at a shelter asking, I'm actually gonna turn myself. So I was contacting a local friend asking for what I could say to Congress. And she said, Amerika, I had 1,000 people come in last night. I don't have time. So then I contacted a friend in El Paso and I said, hey, can you help me prep? And she's like, we are totally swamped. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. So I pinged one of my border messages, and basically the pent-up demand is happening, from Brownsville to El Paso. And Texas has just suddenly dropped it. They just went hot potato. You deal with your issue. And they did not pass that to Customs and Border Patrol or to any of the local authorities. And then in addition, when I went down to Shelby Park to the boat ramp to see what was going on, I saw the state of Texas media van heading down. It was recognized by one of our folks from here in Eagle Pass who's seen them before. So what we're seeing is that they're going to show large number of people coming in, and they're going to say local and federal authorities are overwhelmed. You need us. What we're doing is worth pushing people into the water. What we're doing is worth what the state of Texas is doing is worth the cruelty. And I'm really concerned about the next media cycle. So Janet's asking about what are some concrete things that you can do. So talk about it. We have 2 Facebook pages, and I am, one is facebook.com border vigil, fb.com border vigil, and the other is fb.com EP border coalition. We try to get information up there on a regular basis. EP border coalition. Okay. If I've misspelled those, please let me know and I'll get them figured out. But talk about it. So write a letter to your hometown newspaper about what's going on. If you are from one of the 14 states that is supporting Operation Lone Star, write a letter to the governor there and say, hey, I don't support this. Why are you doing this when my, like whatever hometown you're from, be it in West Virginia or North Carolina or Oklahoma, say, why are you doing this when Oklahomans need better roads? Why are you doing this when West Virginia needs better schools? Why are you doing this when our air quality in North Carolina needs to be improved? Because these tax dollars can be used for so many other things. And really, I'm going to put my video back on. We cannot build a wall big enough. There can't, this is happening all over the world. Italy, I think, had 10,000 people arrive yesterday in Italy. So, and that's an ocean that people are. So this is happening all over the world. And, we have to, and we as individuals have to tell the politicians, the world is changing. We've got to adapt to that, because otherwise, we're killing off, our Nobel Prize winners for the next generation. We're killing off, the next set of inventors. We had a photographer down here, and he was saying that more PhDs in the United States are awarded to foreign-born students than US-born students. He said some of them are American, they have US passports, but they were not born in the United States. More small businesses are started by foreign-born entrepreneurs than are started by people who are born in the United States. And he was just going down this list of all the different ways that immigrants have made the United States a better place. And I think, like I said, I lived 8 years in Fiji. I think we as immigrants in the countries that we've moved to make those places better. And so we just need to find a way that we can move the world and live peacefully with each other. And what's happening is not so great. Let's see, the Texas Tribune has a list of Texas Tribune states supporting Operation Lone Star. They have been keeping a really good list of everything that's going on and what's happening. I'm gonna have to look for it. I'm not finding. Hold on a second. What states for Operation Lone Star? So, yes, yeah, I know South Dakota is one of the states. And okay, here we go. This is the this is actually from the state of Texas, this information here. Something that was really interesting when I went to court on August the 22nd, and I saw what the Texas government was putting as their evidence. I'm like, you're showing the bulldozed banks. You're showing all the destruction you're doing. Like, whose side are you on? So. That's it on questions. Okay, that's a little scary.
America, this is Terry. How are you?
Hi.
Nice to see your smiling face as always. So, how do we get Hispanic voters, US born, not US born, who live in Mexico, activated more? Because not that that's the only group that's going to make a difference here. It's not, but it would help. So, and you've given us some very concrete ideas, and I've shared this with Janet, for example, I believe. If not, I will do it again. But who should we be talking to? We've been trying to reach out, and limited success. So, so any ideas you have, and maybe not even on this call, but if you could send them later, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
How do we make it real?
Yeah. Oh, well, I did send you a list when I was there for the AGM. What we did is the Hispanic Caucus polled a bunch of folks around the world. We said, how did you hear about Democrats abroad? And a lot of people said, I have a friend who told me to go to it. They had relatives in the United States who told them about it. People were at lectures, public lectures, and somebody on the other side of the lecture hall said, I'm a member of Democrats Abroad. Spoke briefly about it. And this is actually Michael Ramos, who's very active now. He's like, we got to find her. And then as soon as the lecture was over, made a beeline for that person. Tote bags that talk about Democrats Abroad and what it does. So any time that you are out, you are representing Democrats Abroad. And so find a way, be it a QR code on your shoulder bag, a pin that you are wearing, something listed on your Facebook profile, to let people know, what's going on and what you're doing. In terms of finding the dual nationals, finding the invisible Americans, in Fiji, I had an American friend who would ask, it was really hard to travel with a Fijian passport. And so he would ask folks, oh, are you traveling? How? And they would say, well, I have an Australian passport, I have a US passport, I have this. And that's how he would find the Americans. Again, he married into a Fijian family. Faculty members at universities have contacted the Hispanic Caucus and asked us, how can we, work with these students? They had all kinds of really cool stuff. So talking to your local universities is a good way to go. So just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks, because it's gonna take everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, and this may be a separate conversation to go into depth about all the different ways, but
Yeah.
it needs to be something that we all do. And you know, maybe you're just nosy. Every person who walks in the door, be like, do you know any U.S. citizens? And actually, when I was in Mexico City, I would talk to folks and they would be like, oh yeah, I used to live in the United States. I'm like, really? Are you a U.S. citizen? You know, which I didn't find anybody like that, but I did pass on some information that they promised they would pass on to others. And it just becomes part of what you're doing. Nancy Creven asked, is Operation Lone Star being paid for by the state of Texas by taxes? Yes. Texas had a budget surplus, and they committed $5 billion in 2022, and they committed another $5 billion in 2023 for this. So, and I see you posted of all the states that are currently supporting Operation Lone Star. So if you're from any one of those, please, please, please post that. And yes, Pamela, many U.S. citizens of Mexican descent are Republicans. We're really emphasizing the humanity here. It's like, you know, people are dying that don't need to die. And also, you know, with climate change, it could be us next trying to go to Oklahoma, trying to go to New Mexico, trying to go to Louisiana and Arkansas, all these places. And if Abbott has his way, every individual state will be able to indicate who they will and they won't take. I don't think they want folks that look like me.
I'd like to thank America very much for being here and talking with us today. She was very, very enlightening. I see one question has come in. I don't want to step on that.
I'll be speaking to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, which are Republicans and Democrats who are self-identified and have joined the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. But I'll be speaking to them on September the 25th, I believe at 2:30 in the afternoon. And I don't know if it's public, but I prepare it as though it will be public.
Great. Again, I just wanted to thank you so very much. Yes, ma'am.
I have a help. If anybody has any experience of that, or if anybody wants to help me prepare, please, I haven't done this before. So I am getting information. I am preparing myself. I have 5 minutes to present my content, my information, and then I have to get questions. So if any like to, you know, put on their Republican Make America hat and growl at me, then believe it or not, I want you to. Because I want to make sure that I do the best job that I can coming up on the 25th. So, and also if you want to, you know, pitch me some softballs, you're welcome to do that as well. So, but I am looking for aggressive questioning, and I am looking to fill out my information. I'm speaking specifically about immigrant impact and the effect on the communities, the local communities here. So I'm reaching out to the shelter, people who run the shelters, to find out what their experiences are. And I'm trying to get some impact information here in Eagle Pass and up and down the border for that.
And I guess the best way to close this is exactly what Pamela is saying right now, power to the people. I would like to thank Ms. Garcia for speaking with us this evening. I would especially like to thank Terry for the help he has given us getting America to speak with us. I'd like to thank Colleen for all her Zoom goddess work. Hail to Colleen. And a brief talk, I just wanted to remind people that we have Cocktails and Conversation coming up at Poncho's on the 27th of September. That's Poncho's West on the Carretera. And then we have our fall festival coming up on the 16th of October at Evalia's in Chapala. And I'd like to thank you all very, very much for being with us this afternoon. Thank you.
And Janet, if I could just pop in here, hopefully you guys can see my screen since I'm talking. Over to the right, no, left of my head, you can see the dates for the upcoming events. I'm sorry, the upcoming elections. me get my head out of the way. I'm not used to this, but I want to get these dates out here. So we're really trying to let folks know who are in Kentucky, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia. You can see there's a handful of really super important states there. You know, if you know anybody who votes from those states, there are 3 Democratic governors who are up for re-election. We want them re-elected. Andy, if I'm saying his last name correctly, Beshears in Kentucky.
Bashir. Mhm.
You know, it's hard for the Republicans when they're not gerrymandering to actually it's harder, I should say, harder for Republicans. You can't really gerrymander an entire state because then it's not really gerrymandering. So we have a better shot in many cases at getting governorships in historically red states. So, and those are so important because at the very least, they stop the Abbotts and the Paxtons and the, you know, whoever's from doing so much harm to our democracy. We've talked about that before in terms of the states being laboratories of autocracy. So if we can, you know, just help these folks who are doing great work in red states, please, if you know anybody in these states, and also, I hope I'm saying this right, but in Ohio, we know that Republicans lost in their attempt to boost the constitutional amendment threshold to 60%. And that's driven mostly by, probably more than that, but, you know, mostly by the desire to keep abortion illegal, to keep it, you know, to continue with the fight on their side to, I guess, eventually make it a national thing where there are no more abortions or reproductive rights. Abortion bans only, no reproductive rights. So hugely important states. 2023 is not an off year. There are important elections everywhere. And yes, power to the people for 2024. So thank you for listening.
Janet, this is Larry.
Yes. Hi,
And
Larry.
I, for those on the call that would like to be involved with the Get Out the Vote effort, we will be looking for volunteers, and we are looking for volunteers who would like to have a little training maybe to help people to register to vote. And we will have sessions coming up shortly. But if anybody right now has interest, please send me an email, larry.pihl@gmail.com, and be really happy to talk to you and see how you can help. But there's some real good things we can do together and take care of some of these special elections that Terry just talked about. Thank you.
Thank you all again. Y'all have a good evening. Thanks.
Bye, Janet.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thanks, America.
Thanks, America.
Thanks, America.